Saturday mornings in Redwood Valley used to sound like water. Not the roaring kind, the polite kind, drip lines sticking under bark mulch, a low shiver through PVC, a whisper when the orchard woke up. If you've never heard 10 Acres sip, it's like listening to a library breathe. 4 years, that sound meant I'd done something right. I'd built a life out of fruit and patience. So when the whisper changed to a rattle, when my pressure gauge began to stutter like a nervous heartbeat, I knew someone, somewhere, had put hands on my water. I followed the pulse along the slope where my apricots throw their morning shade, past the figs that split themselves in sweet apology every August, down to the fence that separates my old trees from the brand-new perfection of North Hollow Estates. On their side, sod so green it looked photoshopped. On mine, dirt that had the courtesy to be honest about what it was. I don't dislike lawns. I dislike the idea that a lawn is a right. In the far corner, a new valve bloomed like a metal flower, unpainted, bright, and very much not mine, grafted to my main line with a confidence I recognized. Confidence is just trespass with better posture. A fresh trench ran under my fence, the soil still soft. The cut edges need the way a thief cuts when he thinks he won't be caught. I shut the main off. The orchard side. Sprinklers on the other side of the fence hissed into silence like they'd been shushed by somebody's mother. That's when he emerged. Russell Claiborne, community standards chair, pressed polo, mirrored shades, that particular smile that only shows up when a man has never been told no by anyone who wasn't paid to say it. "Morning," he said, like we were neighbors comparing bird sightings. "There's been a mix-up. The municipal line is hard to trace out here. Our landscapers must have." "No," I said. "They didn't mix up anything. They drilled into my feed." "Strong words," he said, adjusting the angle of his glasses to catch his reflection. "Let's keep this neighborly." I looked down at the illegal T-joint, at a brand-new gate valve, at the trench that ran straight under my fence like a confession written in date. "Sure," I said. "Neighborly. Step 1, get off my line." He held my gaze just long enough to decide I wasn't going to be easy. Then he switched to the voice people use when they believe they're protagonist and everyone else is supporting cast. "We'll review it at the North Hollow Water Committee. You're welcome to attend." "I don't live in North Hollow," I said. He smiled wider. "Everyone does," he said. "Eventually." I took a photo. Some thefts come with masks and midnight. Others wear name badges. I called the Water District. The dispatcher had the politeness of someone who's heard this story before. "We'll send an inspector," she said. "Don't touch anything." So I touched everything else. I crawled the trench, logged coordinates, recorded the pressure before and after the valve, measured draw rates off my storage tanks. I labeled photos like a prosecutor. Exhibit A, an authorized tap at 241 degrees bearing from Orchard, Maine. Exhibit B, evidence of recent trenching beyond private boundary. Exhibit C, pressure delta 42 psi to 18 psi at 642. By noon I had a folder that could survive a courtroom. The inspector rolled up after lunch. Dusty Ranger, steel-toe boots, a permanent squint that said he'd seen enough of other people's confidence to be immune to it. He whistled low when he saw the joint. They didn't even try to hide it. "Maybe that's the point," I said. He tagged a connection with thick red tape, the kind that makes lawyers blink, and wrote up a violation. "We'll issue an order," he said. "If they don't disconnect, we escalate." I watched him drive toward North Hollow's gatehouse. The guard smiled without letting it reach his eyes. That night my tanks fell 4 inches while every valve on my side was closed. I listened to my lines at 2 a.m. The hum was wrong. Water makes a dozen songs on the way to a leaf, and you learn them if you listen long enough. This one had a guilty tremor. I grabbed my thermographic camera, the one I usually use for coyotes, and swept the fence line. Metal glows different when water moves through it. Under a plant on their side, behind thin wooden slats, something burned bright. A secondary junction. Hidden, but not shy. I filmed it. I logged the time. At 8:15 an email landed from North Hollow Community Standards. Subject line, Notice of Noncompliance. It accused me of diverting critical fire safety water through unpermitted agricultural equipment and jeopardizing neighborhood resilience. It CC'd a city council member, the fire marshal, and Because tyrants are always marketers, a journalist who covers water equity. It was signed by Russell. They weren't just stealing water. They were writing its story. I went to their committee meeting anyway. The clubhouse smelled like new carpet and lemon pledge. Watercolor vineyards lined the walls. A sign at the door said, "Please remove shoes." Another said, "Community over self." I kept my boots on. Russell sat at the head, flanked by two board members that looked like cuttings off the same plant. He introduced me as our agricultural neighbor with a tone used for raccoons who keep getting into the birdseed. He clicked a slide that pretended to be a municipal map. Blue lines, official font, the whole theater. "As you can see," he said, "the municipal easement runs contiguous to our southern perimeter. Routine maintenance required a temporary cross-tie." Temporary, I repeated. I slid a photo onto the projector, the illegal T-joint, time-stamped. A few gasps. I followed with thermal video of the 2 a.m. draw, then a chart, tank loss against North Hollow's posted irrigation schedule. The kind of correlation that makes even friendly lies flinch. "This is theft," I said. "You can call it resilience in your emails, but out here it's stealing." A woman in the second row, gray braid and gardening gloves still on, shifted in her seat. Her name tag read May. She looked at Russell, then at my charts, then at the floor like it had something honest to say. Russell smiled like a pilot announcing minor turbulence. "Emotion is understandable," he told the room, which is what people say when they need you to be quieter. "But we must speak in terms of compliance. We've filed a concern with the city. Public safety doesn't wait for private paperwork." "Then let's show the city everything," I said. "Yours and mine." For a heartbeat, nothing. Then May said, "Show it." The city moves on geologic time until someone hands it a story it can't refuse. I sent a clean packet, photos, logs, thermals, the inspector's violation. I CC'd the fire marshal, the council member, and a reporter I trust, Yanel Ortiz, who writes like she's cross-examining the page. 2 days later, city trucks arrived with clipboards and caution tape. North Hollow's guard smiled like a crack in porcelain. Russell met them with a binder thick enough to need its own seat. They inspected. They documented. They found the second tap behind the planter. The order came fast. Disconnect immediately. Fine pending. Review for criminal referral. Calm language with the authority to shout. That evening, a flyer appeared in my mailbox. "Know your water bullies." It accused me of hijacking community resources and starving hydrants. A photo of my orchard gate had red circles around my valves like a target. No signature, just a QR code leading to a slick awareness site that read like Russell's cologne smelled. When people can't win on facts, they start drawing monsters around your silhouette and hope the pitchforks don't ask questions. I didn't argue online. I opened my gate. I invited the school, the church, the sewing circle that's really a political think tank if you listen long enough. I walked people through the lines, the tanks, the pressure valves. I explained the aquifer, how the state calls an overdraft when withdrawals outrun refills. I didn't say North Hollow out loud. I didn't need to. May came, gloves still on. "We didn't vote on any of that," she said quietly. "The tie-in. Russell does things and tells us later he always meant to." "Why stay?" I asked, which is a rude question when you're not the one paying her mortgage. She smiled sadly. "Because I planted things there, and because leaving is a luxury." That night I found glitter in my valves. Glitter, the kind that gets into oceans, into carpets, into biblical metaphors, and, in my case, into irrigation filters I pay $300 a piece to replace. It's what a vandal uses when he wants to injure with whimsy. I swap filters. I save the glitter. It photographs beautifully in evidence bags. At 3:07 a.m. a week later, a transformer at the end of the road coughed smoke like a scolded dragon. Sirens, robes, rumors in slippered feet. A metal rod jutted through the chain link like a sword. The firefighter on scene, who knows me from my annual burn permits, shook his head. Someone wanted drama, he said. 10 minutes later, a post went up on the neighborhood app, a blurry photo of my tanks with a caption, "When will the city stop private hoarders?" The comments did what comments do. I uploaded the fire department report to a quiet folder only 2 people knew about, my lawyer, Amal, and Yanel. Then I kept working. You can't outbluff a man who believes he writes reality. But you can let him narrate himself into a corner. Yanel reached out to North Hollow as Riverlink Resilience, a fictional nonprofit dangling a paid community water steward partnership, PR, grants, the mirror he wanted. That got us a pre-meeting with Russell and his consultant, a compliance fixer named Evan, in a model home that still smelled like drywall. We didn't hide the camera. We hid it well. You start with narrative control, Russell said, hands steepled, voice smooth as water in a pipe. Bullets like fire safety and equity are your friends. Redirect attention to public good. If someone resists, introduce nuisance actions, permits, inspections. You never accuse. You just ask questions and CC'd emails. The goal is fatigue. Evan nodded like a metronome. And taps? He asked. Everything's a temporary cross-tie if you say maintenance first, Russell said, not blinking. And if they collect evidence? Yanel asked. You flood the channel, he said, smiling. Muddy the record. If you can't win, delay. If you can't delay, escalate. People break when they're tired. Water breaks rocks, he added, proud of himself. Only over time, Yanel said, and sometimes the universe writes lines for you. The piece she ran didn't shout. It measured. It laid pipe and let gravity deliver. Headline: The Valley's Thirst, How Community Standard Became a License to Take. It quoted the inspector. It showed the thermal imagery. It transcribed Russell's words. May spoke in it, and her voice made garden advice sound like scripture. The city announced fines. The water district called the taps what they were: theft. The fire marshal clarified on TV that my tanks were not tied to hydrant lines and that rumors otherwise were unhelpful. North Hollow's board held an emergency meeting. Board members don't resign. They evaporate. Evan stopped returning calls. The guard discovered a sincere smile. Russell wrote a letter, a masterpiece of passive voice. Mistakes were made. Multiple parties may have believed. We understand perception. It went up and came down within an hour after the comments did math. I should have felt triumphant. For 20 minutes, I did. Then I heard the micro leak. A gallon doesn't know it's being stolen. It leaves like any other. You only notice when you've measured enough good water to hear when some goes bad. At 1:44 a.m., my line murmured like a restless child. I followed the sound under stars that looked like clean pinholes in the sky. The fence line, the planter, the abandoned secondary tap, still capped, inspector's tag faded but intact. The sound wasn't there. It was below. I dug on my side. 6 inches. 9. The shovel clinked against PX. Not the old run, a new one. Whoever installed it had gone under my line and up into the old trench on their side, reconnecting beyond the inspector's tag like a magician palming a coin. I shut everything. The murmur died. I sat in the dirt until dawn because anger is a weather system and I didn't want to flood. At 9 I called Amal. At 10 the water district. At noon the sheriff. By evening the trench was open and the body of the theft lay visible and dumb. Russell watched from the sidewalk. His sunglasses were gone. People without mirrors had to practice their faces in windows. He said nothing. I said less. The sheriff used words that matter: referral, criminal, tampering. The city added injunctive relief. The district installed locking vaults. The valley breathed. A month later, the house at the end of North Hollow's cul-de-sac sold quietly. The new owner was not quiet. Elena Park, electrical engineer, co-founder of the real Riverlink. She bought the model, ripped out the irrigation like it owed her money, and knocked on my gate with a clipboard and a smile. I want to pay you for every gallon that left your side, she said. And then I want to design a shared recharge experiment. Gray water into infiltration basins. Mulch rings around your trees. Swales guiding storm flow. Let's put more back than we take. I stared at her like a man who's been arguing with a wall and just discovered a door. You're in North Hollow, I said stupidly. We're starting a co-op, she said. May's on the board. Different kind of board. We sank basins in a weekend with more shovels than I own. The first rain stitched silver seams across the soil. My tanks hit float by noon. Hers held. The aquifer doesn't send receipts. It sends quiet. During a renovation, her crew found a metal box behind drywall labeled archives in Russell's hand. Notes, dates, printed screenshots of comments he'd orchestrated, a map of temporary cross ties that looked like veins drawn by a liar. "Burn it," she asked. "Seal it," I said. "A history book for the house. Every place deserves to remember what it survived." On the first storm of spring, Elena flipped the switch on a 2-street micro-recharge pilot. The mayor cut a ribbon and said words about innovation that tasted fine. Kids stomped in puddles and learned what infiltration means by the important method, splashing. When the cameras left, I walked the orchard. The lines hummed like content cats. The gauge held steady at 42 psi. I could hear the earth swallowing rain and storing it like a promise. A letter arrived a month after Russell's house emptied. No return address. Clean hand. You taught them to hate me. But you still drink. Everyone drinks. No one thanks the man who kept their lawns alive. I handed it to the sheriff. He filed it. He's good at drawers. That night, I turned every valve off and listened. The orchard sang anyway. Water doesn't make music. It allows it. Here's the thing they never tell you about revenge. It's heavy. You can lift it. You can even carry it far. But your hands are busy the whole time, and you can't plant anything while you're holding it. So I put it down. I don't know what valley you live in. Maybe yours hums with traffic, not water. Maybe your theft wasn't gallons, but hours or credit, or a story someone told about you that the room loved too much to question. Maybe your Russell wears different shoes. They always do. How far would you go to defend what keeps you alive? Would you rip up someone else's line to save your lawn? Would you smile while you did it? Would you drown a neighbor in paperwork because your reflection told you were the protagonist? Or, when the fact picked up weight and asked to be carried, would you help? Sometimes justice doesn't show up in a cape or a courtroom. Sometimes it's a shovel and a basin and a woman with a clipboard knocking on a gate you thought only enemies used. Sometimes it's turning a valve off, stepping back, and letting the ground do what it's done since before committees learned to use a word community like a stamp. If it had been your water, your land, your quiet, would you fight? Or would you finally learn the sound of balance and decide that was victory enough? I asked because I had to ask myself. And because there's a good chance, wherever you are, someone is already listening for the way your life hums, deciding where to put their tap. Make sure you know your lines. Make sure you know your neighbors. And when you hear a rattle where there should be a whisper, go outside. Listen.